Now, as far as what Weldon does for our customers, tell us why Weldon products are so good as far as their LED technology.
Sure. Well, Weldon uses reflector technology in different sizes and shapes that are very, very traditional to the fire industry and the ambulance industry in particular, what we're talking about, in different sizes. And Weldon uses some 5mm technology, which is sort of the older technology, but Weldon has also developed their own LED, which they call a VLED. And Weldon is the only lighting manufacturer in the emergency vehicle market that actually makes their own LEDs. And they're 1-watt LEDs, and they're every bit as bright as all of the other LEDs, and in most instances brighter than what other manufacturers are buying from companies like Lumileds, for instance. So where Weldon's advantage is the fact that we manufacture them ourselves and bring them in ourselves. From a cost basis and from a design basis, we'll be able to do some different things than what some of the other manufacturers are doing that are having to buy from another source.
What kind of extra control does that give you over your product?
It gives us the control is that we're able to, we can pick and choose our what they call bins. We can get the best LEDs because we're getting them from ourselves basically, as opposed to different manufacturers that some of the other people buy from that are like, here's the bins we're sending you. Yes, you can tell us that we want this bright and this bright and this bright, but if we don't make them that day because we've got other customers, well, you might be, in terms of delivery, a little bit later, or in terms of pricing, it may cost you a little bit more. So having that direct control, I think, will benefit Weldon greatly, in our design and in our pricing structure.
Okay. Well, what sort of problems do you run up against as you're designing new things for this industry? What are some of the hurdles?
The biggest issue with this industry is it's, as you know, a very traditional industry. We want this size LED, this size light head on the side of our vehicle, and we want it to have a red lens. Well, or we want it to have a blue lens. Well, people don't know necessarily, but if you put a clear lens on it, you can get a brighter, you can get more light output. But there is that traditional hurdle to where they want that size and they want that color because they want people to know that they're a fire truck or they're an ambulance, and so that's a hurdle, that traditional hurdle, and it's a good thing. But at the same time, it sort of restricts the design parameters because there are literally LED light heads that could be made that are half the size of what a Frazer is using right now on the side of their vehicles that will put out just as much light output. But your customer base may not like it because it doesn't look like the traditional light that's in that traditional spot. Right. So I think that's a hurdle for designing. There's also the KKK requirements on the ambulance side of the world, and on the in the fire side of the world, the NFPA requirements that also, there's design parameters around that can't be violated, and there's certain restrictions. So those are some of the things that as designers of lighting you have to account for.
Okay, great. If you would please explain for our customers the difference in the various types of lighting, the LED, the strobe, the halogen, and as far as the jargon, we hear candle power, we hear lumens, we hear all of these. What does that mean in a real world sense?
Well, basically, in just touch on the technology very quickly, you've got halogen, which basically just like a light bulb more or less. It burns with a filament. It has a gas in it, this halogen gas, and over time it'll burn for a certain period of time, and then it'll just go out. Strobe technology is a different type of technology where you basically send a charge and excite a gas. And over time, a strobe tube will degrade slowly because the gas will tend to leak out of the tube over time. And so with a strobe tube, you'll just see the light output not as great. With a halogen, it'll be great, and then poof, it'll burn out. LED is a totally different way of doing things. It doesn't use a gas, doesn't use a filament. It's basically you send this electrical charge through a chemical. And the thing about the LED is that it excites that chemical, and that's where you get your color. Right. And it's the mixing of the colors and how the chemical process works that gives you your rich red or your rich blue coloring. So that's, and then the advantage of that is you can send a much less amount of amperage to generate this huge amount of light, as opposed to a strobe tube that needs a power supply and a capacitor to store the energy and fire the energy, or a halogen that just is an electrical charge and you need a certain amount of energy to make that bulb burn. Right. So that makes the LEDs not only have a much less amperage, which is great for the industry, right, and the batteries and the charging systems, but also you can get different color mixes, and the life of the LEDs will tend to be much, much greater than with traditional strobe or traditional halogen technology. There are a lot of terms that get thrown around: candle power, lumens, candela seconds. Basically, in a nutshell, customers that hear candle power over the years, that term is such an old term, it's even hard to measure it, but you'll hear million candle power, 2 million candle power. It's just a brightness. It's like horsepower of a car. Does it have any real scientific meaning anymore? Some say yes, some say no. Lumens
That's
is a much
different podcast.
Yes,
probably.
exactly. Yeah. Lumens is a much more technical term, and there's a scientific formula for derivation. But basically, all these things for the customer just means how bright is the light. You know, if it has 5,000 lumens, it's going to be brighter than something that has 500 lumens. Something that has 50,000 candle power versus 500,000 candle power, the 500,000 candle power is going to be brighter. However, you might need a lot more energy to create that bigger signal, and so you have to be careful. You know, I may want a very bright light, but it may be very focused, and it may take a lot more energy than your charging system might have the ability to accommodate.
Right.
So, you know, the customer has to look at it in balance. You know, how bright do I want? How much energy do I want to use to create that bright light effect? And then what type of technology do I want to use to make that happen?
Fantastic.